This story of one man's compassion traveled across land and sea and touched the heart of another man.
I read about this man, who's now my spiritual father, over breakfast cereal on June 20th, 2011. And that article was called, is in the bottom of the front page of the LA Times. And the article was called South Korean Pastor Tends an Unwanted Flock. And it was all about how this man in Korea had built a mailbox for abandoned babies. And I grew up making movies. I wanted to make movies since I was 9. So in my neighborhood, I used to make movies like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and James Bond spin-offs and things like that. And we put up a screen in the backyard and bring all the families over. I don't think my parents had any idea I was planning to join that circus for the rest of my life, but I definitely wanted to. But all those films really were battles. My life was on a silver platter, and I grew up in Orange County. You know, I lived the American dream. But there was something really fake about it. So when I saw him, he lived in a neighborhood like I did when I used to make movies with my friends, but it felt like he was in the battle. And it was like seeing real courage for the first time ever. And I remember the scene in the movie Hotel Rwanda where Don Cheadle's sitting with Joaquin Phoenix and he's talking about, you think anybody's gonna come help us? You know, they're gonna see this genocide, do you think they're gonna come help us? And Joaquin Phoenix turns to him and says, you know, I think people are gonna see this story and they're gonna go, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And then they're gonna go on eating their dinners. And I didn't touch my food. So I decided to reach out to him. I reached out to the Times, got all of his information, sent an email out to Pastor Lee. A month later, he gets back to me in a Google translated email and basically says this: Dear Brian, this is Pastor Lee. I don't know what it means to make a documentary film about my life, but you can come live with me if you want.
You ever seen Despicable Me? Looks like, oh my gosh, she totally does. The little girl from Despicable Me and her little ponytail, which I love. Huh. Huh. You look exactly like her.
I came back from this trip, obviously affected. God uses the weak to shame the strong. You know, he used a person who didn't believe in him at all to make this movie. He used a man in the gutters of alcoholism and rage to save children, and the world's tipping their hat to him, and they have no idea that he's not a natural-born hero, but that he was saved to save, and so was I.
This is definitely a global issue. I'm learning more and more that there are a lot of babies and baby boxes in other nations, and I believe about 18, 19 countries have come to us and taken video footages of our ministry. And now this documentary, and just thinking about it while I was praying, I came to realize that there is an answer from God to the cries of these little precious children all around the world. And God has chosen this story to bring about the message of hope for those children. I do think that it's God's way of loving our life, through awakening a lot of people around the world, just like me, just like how God used a person like me in order to do what they are supposed to do in those places. I believe that's the message.
This all started with a boy who was born that doctor said shouldn't even continue to live because he's going to live his whole life on his back. And he's done so for 29 years. And as the film says, he's the reason why Pastor Lee cared about the voiceless and the vulnerable people. And his son, Unman, is who taught me that God loves me even though all I have to offer him is my sin. And it's amazing to me that God used a boy on his back to change the whole world. And if he can use Unman, then he can use us broken people too.